Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. My name is Steve Smith, and I'm your host. And we are now into the month of February. And as I mentioned, that I'm welcoming back another segment of the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast, which is an old one that I know you all love and enjoy just as much as I do. And that is the design brief, where I get to go around and talk to different golf course architects about golf courses and what they do and how they get into the architecture side of life and the design side of things, and really pick their brains and understand more about golf course architecture on golf courses. That's what we're doing, bringing it back, starting off with a cracker. This one is with Richard Chamberlain from Richard Chamberlain Golf Design, who is a member of the Society of Australian Golf Course Architects. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode number 106. Ladies and gentlemen, the design brief is back with a vengeance, and I am very excited to start chatting with golf course architects, mostly in Australia, but who knows where we'll go. There'll be some people around the world. And already on the line, we're starting off the year 2025 with a design brief. I have on the line Richard Chamberlain, golf course architect of Richard Chamberlain Golf Design, member of the Society of Australian Golf Course Architects. Welcome, Richard.
Thanks very much for having me on, Steve. It's a pleasure.
Mate, have you ever... I've always got to start off with, have you ever done a podcast before?
No.
It's a first?
No, I don't think I have. No, I don't think I have. I sit on planes a lot, and a lot of people tell me, stop watching movies, stop watching Shawshank Redemption for the 52nd time, listen to podcasts on the plane, and it's... I don't know, I'm not technically savvy enough to download them and listen, but I know I should listen to more because I know, including yours, there's some cool stuff out there.
No, thank you, mate. There is lots, and it's, I get it, for a certain generation. I'll put you in a bit of a box there, mate, without being rude. There's certainly people that aren't used to it or don't know how to get onto it, but once you get into it, I think lots of people become fans pretty quickly. So hopefully we're converting you, mate, and you being on the pod is one of those. So looking forward to our conversation, and you're going to let us on a bit of an insight into your career now and what you've been up to and what's in the future as well, mate. So I'm looking forward to opening up a few boxes with you, mate. Are you ready to rock and roll?
Fire away.
We'll start off with a bit of fun. It's the Design Brief Fast 5. So it's quick fire 5 questions, and mate, feel free to answer them however you choose. Number 1, you ready?
Go.
Preferred grass type on a golf course for an architect. I'm interested to hear this. What's your preferred grass type?
Oh, look, bent grass, obviously the premier grass to putt on, but I would probably say 99% of my jobs are in warm season stuff. So I'm really seem to be working in Cooch world. So
okay.
Look, the go-to, I guess, at the moment up here is, geez, I've drawn the bloody blank. Tiff Eagle.
Yep, on greens.
It's not perfect, but it's probably the best we got out there at the moment.
Yeah, Tiff Eagle on greens becoming popular with a lot of the warm season stuff around Australia, that's for sure. Been around a little while in the States, I believe.
Yeah.
Let's just clarify this. You're based up in Queensland, southeastern Queensland?
I'm on the Gold Coast. I'm sitting in my home office at Mudgeeraba. So,
very nice part of the world, mate. So warm season, and it's Cooch grass for you, generally speaking. That's good.
From a work point of view, but player board point of view, you know what people in Queensland are like. Mate, they go down and play on some bent greens in Victoria or somewhere and just have a rude awakening to how quick things are down there.
Yeah, it can be very different, and likewise in reverse. I come from Sydney, obviously, and always grown up on cool season green surfaces, bent greens, and sometimes power as well from my background. But when you go to Cooch, it's a weird awakening in reverse. It's kind of really strange that things don't bend and move around slopes like you would expect.
Yeah, grain is just a head case. I still can't get around it after 40-odd years of playing golf, or 50 probably now.
Very good, mate. Okay, number two. Stripes or no stripes on fairways? This is a bit of a crossover from my keeper of the greens, Steve Super 7. So I'm bringing that one in. What do you think?
Stripes or no? Most of the time, no stripes.
Okay.
But in instances, stripes suits. But I don't think stripes suit everywhere.
Yep.
So most of the time I prefer to see no stripes. But if you're in a nice tree-lined course, a lot of those northern courses there at Sydney, I think striping looks fantastic.
Okay.
I do admire some of the skill that goes into doing it, especially with some of the fancy ones. But a lot of that striping stuff gets way too busy. Not a fan of the half and half because I always think that always looks a bit Not a fan of the half and half. I know it can give you a centre point to aim at when you're playing, but I just don't like the look of it all that much.
I've never heard anyone mention that black and white, as I call it, half and half, 50-50, whatever. That's a really interesting observation from an architecture perspective. So I like that, mate. Thanks for throwing that one in.
No worries.
Number 3, favourite type of par 4? Short par 4 or long par 4?
Absolutely, 1,000% short par 4. I'm nearly, I don't know now, I've just turned 59. I'm hitting it nowhere. Bloody hell. 360-metre par 4s stretch me out these days, where I'm thinking about two drivers off the deck and something else. So, no, always have been a fan from probably the day I played that. Is it the third or fourth hole at Woodlands? I fell in love with short par 4s.
Oh, wow, that's a good one.
When I played that course down there. There's a couple down there. So, yeah, no, unadulterated. I'll tell you a funny little thing.
Go for it.
Literally last night, I got invited to a page at a course in southeast Queensland. I'll mention the course. It's Windaroo.
Okay.
And Ross Watson designed it back in the early 80s, and there was a par 5 called Snake Gully or something like that.
Yep.
And it had an island where you could take the shortcut, but the island got closed down pretty quickly because of houses getting hit. Right. So it's always been a long, strong par 4, really strong, with a little creek that runs in front of the green that 99% of the people can't carry. And they've just changed the par to a 5, and now there's a huge dispute as to whether it should be a really easy, boring par 5 or a really tough par 4. And
interesting conversation piece. Yeah.
In the end, I said, it's a number on the card. Make it a par 3 if you want, but the bottom score, the lowest score still wins. But, I get it. People, yeah. And then I think another important thing was they kept saying, it's a great hole, it's a great hole, it's a great hole. It's not a great hole. It's a really, really hard hole. If you make a 4 on it, you've made a great 4. But I said, don't confuse difficult holes with great holes.
Oh.
And I think a lot of people think it's great because it's so bloody hard. But mate, leave it as a 4.
That's an interesting line. A lot of people confuse difficult holes with great holes. I like that line. That gets you thinking straight away.
Yeah.
And does an arbitrary figure? Let's face it, par's an arbitrary number. It's something that you can, like you said, you can put a 3 on it if you want to, or you can put a 6 on it. Strangely enough, but does a short par 5 for that? And I don't know the hole, I've not played there. So does a short par 5 make it a better hole in people's minds, do you think, than a difficult par 4? I know you just said that you like it as a par 4.
I reckon it's purely just about scoring. I reckon it probably goes from index 1 to index 15. A lot of those guys will now get a shot. I think it's more about scoring points, Stableford points, than actually the quality of the hole. And to be honest, Ross Watson did the design back in the day, and It's a very narrow little green just perched over the water. The green's built to be played as a little flick shot par 5. It's not the green that you want to be hitting a
long
ball
one,
5 wood into or whatever.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, mate. This is already a great conversation. I think a lot of people are going to get a kick out of this stuff. So, very good, mate. That's you've opened up. I'm going to change it from the Design Brief Fast 5 to just the Design Brief 5. We're opening up cans of worms here already. All right, number 4, mate. Can you name a golf course with a bunker style that you really like? Could be anywhere.
Can I flip it?
Sure.
I had my first trip. I can't believe I was 58 years old making my first trip to the UK last year.
Wow.
Got a game on the old course, played quite well, got in 2 of their pot bunkers, and always a fan of pot bunkers, but vertical wall. It was impossible to get out of the 2 that I was in. I took 3 top shots to get out of 2 bunkers. And I stood back there and I looked at it and I thought, Leah, look, even going sideways was really, really difficult because I had 5 yards to land it on, and then I was going to be going in the gunge or the gorse or whatever it was. And I thought they were far too difficult. I know, again, I shouldn't have been in them, but look, Royal Melbourne bunkers, Kingston Heath bunkers, they're the king for me. They've got the manpower to look after them down there. They're works of art. They really are. Most of the sand-built bunkers. That's, from an aesthetic point of view, they're my winners.
That's an interesting observation. Again, I love picking the brains of architects. This is going to be a great series. I'm really excited by this. So hearing you talk about, I don't think there'll be too many people that would be, and I'm going to use the word brave enough to say that about St Andrews, because some people probably say it's taboo. You can't go there and commentate in that way about St Andrews. That's a really interesting thing. I've not been there. It's taken you, like you said, a long time in your life to get there and do that. That's surprised. I don't think I've heard anyone say that about how difficult they are for, I suppose, an average golfer.
Yeah. I've demonstrated. I walk up to a wall and I go, there you go. Head height is the top of the bunker. And I go and put a ball a foot from the face of the trap. And I played some wonderful shots that it went straight up in the air. It just caught that last little bit of overhanging lip, came back in the bunker. And I did that twice before I ended up going sideways. But I think it just crossed the line from difficulty to madness, really.
Wow. Okay. That's one day I'll be curious to see it. Did we have anything like that here? I know when Moona was built down in Melbourne, Moona, I can't remember which course it is, the one that they built for the Australian Open. They got pretty.
I don't know whether any of them are as, I don't know, penal as that. I can't think of any of them. There's a lot of difficult bunkers around the place, but
okay.
I don't think there's anything as difficult as that.
Okay, very interesting. Another great observation, mate. Thank you. Number 5, the last one. Can you name one of your favourite golf courses by design? And again, it could be anywhere, but I'm sure as a golf course architect, you've probably got 1 or 2 or 3 floating around the top of your head. You go, really, that's just one of my favourites.
I'll give you 2. I had my birthday weekend down at Barnbougle in October, and I think they're the best 2 courses enjoyment-wise for a guy like me.
Yep.
Who's hitting it nowhere these days. You've still got a chance of getting it around. You've got fairways the size of football fields. Yeah, you've got to be on the right side of things, but probably more about the whole Barnbougle experience. But those 2 courses, 3, I've got to throw in 3 because the Bougle Run is just brilliant as well. It's just a great place to throw a beer in and play for 2.5 hours. I think they're probably my pick. I could play them courses every day till I die.
There you go.
Nothing wrong with the Kingston Heaths and RMs of this world.
Sure.
But I just think from an enjoyment factor, they're the best down there at Barnbougle.
Unreal, mate. Fantastic. Thank you for that great insight on those 5 questions. That's really interesting, mate. Thank you very much. A bit of fun. Good to hear.
No worries.
Now, we'll talk a little bit about yourself, mate, and a little bit about your career, your business, and the things that you do. As I mentioned at the top of the podcast episode, you're a member of the Society of Australian Golf Course Architects, and that's got a great number of peers that are involved in that group. And how long have you been involved with that? As long as you've been an architect?
I'm probably going back to early 2000s. So I'm probably come up to 25 years. And look, I will say from my point of view, look, I really appreciate you inviting us on here, because I'm a guy who's been doing this coming up to 1988. You work it out. What's this, about my 37th year? Is that right? Hang on.
That's about right.
I haven't got a calculator on the
That's
desk
about
here,
right, because I'm 44.
I've been doing
yeah.
it a long time, and yet I think I'm still a bit of an unknown, even though I've done a lot of work, because I've just, I'm busy doing the work. I don't promote myself all that much, but there's a lot of work has gone through my desk at the moment, and yet a lot of people probably still don't even know I exist.
Yeah, and you know what? Exactly. This is like some of the golf courses and the greenkeepers that I interview, superintendents. It's a similar thing. I love to talk about.
It's like it's who I see getting promoted up to that. I've done a long apprenticeship under Graham Marsh and Ross Watson, and set my own company up in 2008, and it took a long time to really establish yourself. And I think, just get on the ground, work well with people, do a good job, and then work on the word of mouth factor. There's 3 blokes sitting at a pub at a conference, superintendent's conference. Mate, I need to get a green design, and hopefully there's someone in the circle that could say, put Chambo on the list because he knows what he's doing. That's probably the way I've worked for the last 20 years.
So, okay, let's unpack that then. Tell us a little bit about your early time. You mentioned Graham Marsh and Ross Watson, working with those couple of, I suppose they're legendary Australian golf course architects in a way. They've been around a long time. Take us back to the beginning, mate, for yourself. How did you get into the industry? How did you get into working with Ross Watson and Graham Marsh?
I played golf since an early age, but joined Wynnum as a junior when I was about 16 or something like that up in Brisbane. finished high school in 82, didn't really have a clue what I wanted to do. I got accepted into a cartography course at QIT, which is maps.
That's
so the only thing I
cool.
was really enjoying at school was sort of tech drawing and stuff like that, not so much hands-on, more drawing. So I always had the drawing and the maths behind me. And I got into cartography, which was understanding contours, and I think that's probably the framework of being a good architect, is to be able to look at a plan, understand where the hills and valleys and stuff are. It's not easy at the start. It really does take you a while to get going. So I was doing an associate diploma of cartography. I wasn't a golf architect at this stage. I was working for the mines department, drawing up mining leases around Queensland. 37 hours a week, 3 nights a week at uni for 3-hour lectures. And I was playing first division soccer at the time in Brisbane as well. So
Wow.
it was pretty hectic there from the age of probably 18 through to about 23. Unfortunately, as you know me, I like a beer, Steve.
Indeed.
And I hit a couple of. I was cruising through subjects in year 1 and 2, and then I got to year 3, and I had land laws and regulations and spherical trigonometry, and they just did my head in.
Sounds like fun.
Unfortunately, between my work office and QIT were a couple of pubs, and we generally start walking down whatever it is, George Street to QIT. Listen, we'll just sneak in here and have a beer, and next thing you know, I'm missing lectures and I'm not going it. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of my cartography course. And I messed around for a few jobs, and I saw an ad one day in the paper in about 1988 for Marsh Watson, golf architect. And I wasn't one of those guys that doodle golf holes on the back of a page. I went, oh, look, there's a career in, golf course architecture. So I assumed it was Graham Marsh and Tom Watson, to be honest.
Right.
Anyway, rang up. There's going to be a few of these stories, all are intertwined with beer. But I got down to the last 2. They were just looking for a draftsman, right? And at their Nerang office. And I got down to the last 2 and missed out. This was mid-year 1988. And I was in a Melbourne Cup suite with the mines department. And the Melbourne Cup day started at the Port Office Hotel at 7 o'clock in the morning and finished up at the track. Anyway, I happened to win. It was the year of Empire Rose. So I won $5,000 in a sweep. It was pretty loose at the track, and my new wife decided to drag me home at 4 o'clock from the races. I'm sitting at home pretty much cut, and I thought, I'll ring that bloke up at Marsh Watson and see how things are going. And Graham Papworth answered the phone, another member of SACA.
Yep.
And he said, perfect timing, Rich. The guy who got the job's going back to Adelaide. Do you want the job? Boom. I started on the 1st of December. So
wow, what a great...
a drunken phone call after the Melbourne Cup, 1988, $5,000 in the pocket from the sweep. So there was a period there, late 1988, where I got married in September. Empire Rose won the Cup. I won $5,000. And I started working in the golf design industry on the 1st of December. So it was kind of a big end of the year.
That is as Aussie a story as you'll ever come across. That is sensational.
Because I can remember Empire Rose 1988, that's how I relate it to the wedding anniversary and how many years I've been married as well. So that was genius.
That is that's fantastic. I'm just going to jump in, mate. I hearing a lot about that, as you mentioned. I know you do enjoy a beer, don't we all? Which is great. But I didn't know there was such a thing as a course in cartography. I'm sure that's long gone now with modern technology. But that's really fascinating because I love maps and love drawings and all that sort of stuff. I had no idea that existed.
I spent the first probably year of my work. So the mining leases are on this about an A3 page, and we still used the quill to do all the writing. So I used to have to write, just practice my printing every day, and all the writing on it wasn't done on computers in those days. It was done with the quill. And I'm a left-hander, and I don't know if you know how the quill works. It drops the ink out of it. Right-handers are easy because they just drag their hand from left to right, but the left-handers have to drag the back of their hand across it, and it was too easy to smudge. So there was a lot of practice went on. In cartography, though, there was mapping and surveying, there was mines department. There was basically nothing outside of the government to work in.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And without a word of a lie, all the stories you heard about the public service back in the 80s, I would be given a couple of plans to do that I probably could have knocked up in 2 days, and my boss would say, see if you can stretch that out for a fortnight. Honestly, that was the way they operated. It was the cruisiest job of all time.
Oh, dear.
We were down the port office every day. It was a bit of fun, but it wasn't really a career. So, the fact that I didn't really want to stick around there, and spherical trig and land laws and regulations was kind of a perfect storm to get the hell out of there and try something else. So I fluked it at Marsh Watson in 88.
Yep.
And primarily as a draftsman. Here's another one for you. They bought a $150,000 computer, Unix-based computer. Never been on a computer in my life. They sat me down and said, here you go, Richard. See if you can make it work, see what it can do. And I was basically just sitting there for the first year just trying to work out what this computer could do. And eventually we worked out we could do some earthworks quantities. We could do some graphics. We got to the point where I was doing wireframe graphics for the green designs that they did, and Marsh Watson, they were formed in 1986, Ross Watson and Graham Marsh, when they built Palm Meadows. Palm Meadows was a
Yes.
Graham Marsh design.
Great
Ross
golf
was
course.
involved in civil and stuff, and they got together after that. Now, they broke up in 1991. They were only together for 3 years, but I'd love to get a resume and see what they knocked out, but there was a lot of work got smashed out in those 3 years.
Mate, they absolutely pumped out some rippers in that time.
When the split was there in the early 90s, I better get a bit confused as to which ones are Marsh Watsons and which ones are Graham Marshes. And when Ross left, basically the whole team stayed together and Ross went out on his own.
Right.
Man, when I started in 88, they were building Robina Woods, Paradise Palms. I think the Vines in Perth wasn't far along. There was jobs in...
Terry Hills down here in Sydney was done.
Terry Hills was one of them ones that was on the cusp.
Right.
I think Horizons was on the cusp there.
Yes, of course.
Horizons started as a Marsh Watson, might have finished up a Marsh, not sure.
Port Stevens there, yep.
Yeah, mate, they did a lot of work, and then you look back and go, they were only together for 3 years, and
wow. Wow, there you go.
And look, Ross went off and did his thing in Malaysia. He was very successful over there and ended up coming back to Oz. And I stayed with Marshy through till 2002, but primarily just as a CAD guy. We were probably, can you imagine spending 150 grand on a computer in 1990, whatever it was?
Mind-boggling numbers.
And our computer graphics got to the stage, really proud of this, that, I think we were the world leaders because we actually went to the Singapore Golf Show, flew me over to the Singapore Golf Show. We set up this computer at the golf show up against the Palmers and the Nicklases and all the big names back then when, resort courses were just going bananas.
Yep.
And I can remember the Palmer guys and the Nicholas guys. They came over, they had a really good look around, and guess what? 12 months later, they're doing exactly the same thing. So
wow,
I like to think Marshy really sort of put his nuts on the line and got that computer side of things humming along. They went pretty quickly from Unix to the more affordable PCs, and obviously now it's pretty much all done on the CAD.
Yep.
But yeah, they were really the innovators back there in the very early 90s, and
when golf, and we had a lot of overseas money, I believe it's Japanese money, a lot of it in the early 90s, building golf courses in Australia, like you mentioned, the Gold Coast and that sort of stuff, even here in Sydney, with the Terry Hills of the world. So there's some big stuff going on there. At
that time, I can remember the Yanks were building 400 courses a year. I'd love to know what that number is now, but they went through almost the best part of a decade, and they were building 400 brand new courses a year. So
wow, we only
don't know how many of them are still around. A lot of them were probably real estate driven.
Yep.
Which is exactly what happened here in Australia. We kind of copied. We had North Lakes and Arundel Hills, and I don't know, count them up. How many real estate driven properties?
And both of those are closed now.
Isn't that funny? Isn't it?
That's the two that you just named.
The developers sold the last piece of land or the last house. He doesn't want to know about it.
Interesting.
So yeah, I ploughed through as really only a draftsman through those years, and we had a huge office there at Robina, we had guys like Dave Hanby, who's irrigation consultant, was full time. Peter Williams, the ex-Royal Melbourne superintendent, was a designer. Graham Papworth, David Ireland, a cast of thousands out in the admin section. There was probably 20 staff running around there. It was a monster. It was a real monster in its day, which was a big monster to feed. And
Sure.
it was kind of, I felt it was a bit more assembly line golf. It was just boom, get it designed, get it CAD, get the plans done, go out, build it. But we even had some of our construction foremen, if you want to call it, in between jobs. They would basically just loiter around the office with not much to do, just so that they didn't get poached by another company to go to the next job. Like, it was really assembly line stuff through that time, I thought.
And that's not that like you said, it follows the US model that we often hear people talk about. I'm curious to bring out a lot of this stuff because there's not a lot of this documented. And so talking with people like yourself, members of the society, we're going to get a little bit of a snapshot through Australian design history as well, which I'm really excited to hear and bring out to people. And I think that's going to be, there's no one talking about this sort of thing in Australia. So I'm really excited and I really appreciate you guys spending the time and talking about some of these things throughout your career. So that says a lot about that period of time in architecture that we had, that we see the results of. We don't know how a lot of that worked, but that resorts were pumping out, and we hear people talk about now, and I suppose a bit of the buzzword is design in the field. It's not done in an office in a computer, and then someone goes out and builds the plan exact. It's we take a concept, we're going out into the ground, and that's where we're really doing the design work as architects. That's what we hear people talk about these days. And back then, you're saying it very much was more so on the plans and contractors
build.
build.
Hand in hand with all the engineering crew, all the sub consultants of the residential development and all that sort of stuff. And they had drainage and sewer and everything running through the course. You couldn't just be making stuff out on the golf course. You still had a match plan to stick to, and that's when the CAD really, the CAD work. Not everyone had jumped on board at this stage, but that's when the CAD was really useful, where we could tie in with the other consultants.
Okay.
But there was so much work. Like Marsh was busy. Thompson Perrott were busy. Tony Cashmore was doing tons of work. I'm trying to think who else was running around there. But Norman was probably just embarking on the scene then, and he was sort of starting to get some jobs. So there was enough work for everyone. It was really cool.
Yeah, wow.
But things changed not long after that.
Everything quite dramatically changed, I guess, in a way. And does that tie in with you starting to branch out on your own?
Well, it probably does. I still got another leg in there. I think I left. Marty basically said, look, we've run out of work in, I think it was about 2001. I can put you on 2 days a week. And I went, well, I can't pay my bills on 2 days a week. So I parked up at home and basically did a drafting service to back to Graham. And then Ross Watson found me. He'd come back to Australia. He was living at, can't remember, in Rapilli, I think. But he had a few projects on the go. He was working at Sydney clubs like Massey Park and a few of those sort of council.
I think he was involved with Coinda Waters as well around the early 2000s.
Yeah, well, that's when we got together. So I didn't leave Marshy. I was kind of forced out of there because there was no work. And then Ross was still doing his plans by his hands. He was getting a bit long in the tooth, and he said, look, I need you to see the CAD, but he hadn't seen CAD done well. And as soon as I did the first plans from it, might have even been Massey Park, he said, mate, that's what I want. Do you want to come and work for me full time?
Yeah, wow.
But he said, this is 2002. But he said, look, no promises. I'm getting along in the tooth. We might be together here for 5 minutes.
Yep.
And then the industry took a little bit of an upturn, and I've got the courses listed out here. So there was me and Ross and a part-time receptionist working out of his house at Robina. And we knocked out the full Royal Sydney rebuild, Coinda Waters, Magenta Shores, Yering Meadows. He still had a lot of remodelling work at Avondale, Pymble, Indooroopilly, Wollongong, rebuilt the Palms at Sanctuary Cove, and all this was in a period between about 2002 and 2007. So we went from being, no promises, Rich, to really getting out of control and knocking out, and I probably still missed a couple of courses in there.
But
it was at that point when I had to get out of my comfort zone, and that's if there was one little phrase that changed my life, was Ross said, my comfort zone was sitting in front of the computer.
Yep.
And he would say, no, mate, I want you to go and have a meeting with the board. I want you to go and talk to the superintendent, get the plans. I want you to do a couple of green designs. And it was Ross that dragged me out of my comfort zone and really got me into that. And I really enjoyed, the whole thing where, I got taken from the office guy to, meeting clients and seeing how the process went. I already knew how the drainage and stuff worked from my time at Marsh, Watson and Marsh, but this was now the step that I really started getting into design. Still never really, I wasn't striving. I wasn't picking up plans and having to go myself. It was kind of forced on me. And Ross was very good at the contouring, and the contouring is just an art form. One, you've got to read the plan. Two, you've got to stand there or sit there, and you've got to work out what the design of the hole is going to be and contour it up so that we could then digitize it in the computer, get all the earthworks, produce the plans. Now I know that's not the only way to build a green or a golf course. I know you can ad-lib it on the ground, especially on a sand site, but when you need to balance earthworks and do quantities and do all this sort of stuff, that's where the CAD was really useless as the foundation for me. And I think I came on in leaps and bounds under Ross, because he was the one that really got me into the design. And, I was kind of his wingman for those projects, still wholly solely Ross Watson Designs. As we kind of got to the back end of it, the Magenta Shores and the Coimbra, they were built at the same time. It was amazing. Ross would fly to Sydney. He would do a site visit at Avondale with the Poodle, Dave Warwick. He would probably go to Kimble. There was generally another stop on the way. He would go up. He would do a site visit. He would do 5 courses in a week and a half, and that was his site visit. He was very organised with that sort of thing. I still need a little bit of work on that side of things with me, but there was a lot of work going on, and every now and again I'd come along and help him out. And where we first started to butt heads was his bunkering. I couldn't question his drainage. I couldn't question his routing plans, but I got to the point where I thought he was putting too many bunkers out there, and he was making courses difficult. I don't know if you played Magenta Shores, but it's a great test of golf, but I thought it was very difficult to play for the average punter.
It's funny you mentioned Magenta, because I have played it. I haven't played it for a long time. I played it soon after it opened, and it is, I'm going to use the word wild. There's a lot in Magenta. And some would argue and say that there's probably too much of everything in Magenta, but each to their own. I mean, it's a design.
That's our industry is based on your own view. There's no right or wrong.
That's right, and that's
just purely opinions.
And Magenta's held in very high regard in the design and architecture space in Australia. It rates very well in the top 100 lists usually, and people talk about the members are passionate. I know that for a fact, and but I. Yeah, there's a lot there, and if I was to, you don't like to compare too much, but knowing that Coimbra and Magenta were sort of built around a similar time, I don't think you could consider them but they're also very different sites. Magenta's all sand on the beach, an old tip site, and
sand on the beach, and Coimbra, my God,
Coimbra's a swamp.
I've never seen a site with. Oh, it was more than a site. They had barrels with skull and crossbones underneath some of the land there. It was hideous. It was acid sulphate soils. It was the worst site.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst. I did a walk around there with John Nail and Dave Hamby one day, and we're looking at each other going, what the hell are they even thinking about building a golf course here? This is hideous. So when you look at what it was versus what it is now, I think the Coimbra one was a much bigger achievement, and it was a floodplain. It flooded every 5 minutes into that, what is it, the Wyong River?
Yeah, it's horrific with water.
But what it got to, and I said maybe that my golf game's been heading south for quite some time. I would rather play Coimbra 5 times a week than Magenta. Magenta would just blow me off the planet. So,
I think it.
And this is really probably the point where. I thought he overbunkered Royal Sydney a bit. I thought he overbunkering, and I think he just loved the wow factor of the bunkers. I think a really good player appreciates it because they're not going in anywhere near as many bunkers as me. But I would say the B and C graders didn't like the designs as much, but just because they were too hard. But I reckon a lot of A graders loved them.
Yeah, and I can speak. I'm a big fan of bunkering. I'm an A grader. I love it. I love to look at it. But like I said, we could pick apart and talk about all sorts of designs by different people. And you, no doubt, I'm sure as an architect, maybe this is a question. Do you do that after to your own work sometimes? Do you sit there and consider your own work years later down the track and go, you know what? I think it's probably time to maybe that wasn't quite the best thing to do there. And as times evolved, we reassess. Does that happen?
Yeah, no, it is. I don't think you can help yourself. I remember going through an early walkthrough at, I think it was Caloundra Golf Club, and Ross had done something a decade earlier, back when he was just a one-man band, and he was standing there on the hole. They were going through a master plan, and he went, yeah, I did that about 10 years ago. What the hell was I thinking? I remember him saying that. What the hell was I thinking? So, look, you get better over time no matter what you do. I still like to think that the first things I did under my own banner in 2008 was still pretty good, but I think it was that Royal Sydney, Coimbra, not so much Coimbra Waters. I wouldn't say Coimbra Waters is overbunkered. You can throw Pacific Harbour at Bribie Island into the mix. Really nice golf course, some pretty funky greens out there on a very flat site, but I think I could cull 40 bunkers tomorrow with my eyes closed out there. And then we got to move from the playability of the bunkers to the maintenance of the bunkers, and this is where I really honed in. I think I'm so far in tune with the superintendents, because I understand that you can't look after 80 bunkers with 6 staff. It's not doable. And I think the tricky thing is, I'm surrounded by Lakelands, Palm Meadows, all these courses around Robina Woods, and I don't know, Palm Meadows has probably got 80, 90, maybe even 100 bunkers. And back in the day, and I know the superintendents, they would have had a $2 million budget and probably 15 to 20 staff.
Yeah.
Now we've moved forward 20, 30 years. Some of these guys have got budgets of well under $1 million and maybe 6, 7 staff, and that stuff they built cannot be maintained. And I've now almost, they're not knocking me on the shoulder. Richard, can you do me a bunker plan? We want to fill in some of these bloody things. And no fault of the designer. They ticked the design brief back in the day, but just things changed. The goalposts moved, and I think there's a lot of courses I could go and fill in bloody thousands of bunkers here on the Gold Coast alone.
Well, I know that's one of the things, and you and I have talked about this before recording, that yourself, you and you articulate them quite well, is that you're more in tune with the maintenance realities of bunkers and what it means to look after them, and budgets change. And Palm Meadows is probably a classic example. I'm a massive fan of the layout. I played it there only, I think, last year, and was really impressed by it. And I played it a number of years ago, and you could see that it doesn't have the budget that it used to have 25 years ago when it had the Daikyo Cup, I think it was, back in the early 90s, and they had all the staff. I don't know the name of the superintendent there at the moment, but I've seen the work that they do on what they can manage and maintain very well, and they do a fantastic job. But you can also see that they just don't have the ability or the staff labour numbers to look after all those bunkers. They do exactly what they can do, and they do it exceptionally well, because the greens and the golf course is fantastic. But the bunkers, it's just an extra level of another couple of people, to be honest, to look after them, 2 or 3 to be fair, and that's where it's getting, thoughts are reassessing those sorts of parts of the golf course and whether they still need to be there because we can't maintain them. It's an interesting conundrum, and also things change, golf courses change, golf itself evolves as a sport, and society moves with how things in the world interact, and it's kind of, I suppose, you've kind of look at things all the time. I go back to that looking and reviewing.
And look, I really focus on absolutely minimising the bunkers whenever I do any new designs. And I got to admit that there's probably a lot of my work looks pretty bland because it just doesn't have the wow factor about it. But I like to think that the bunkers are in the most critical places. Hopefully they've only got less than 100 square metres of sand to look after around a green rather than 500,000. Classic example, I'm working through slowly down at Ocean Shores.
Yes.
Really good, really strong golf course, but they've got they've got bunkers that are 300 and 400 square metres each. Their small ones are probably 150 square metres each, and we're going through and just culling them. So at the moment, we've only done holes 1, 2, 3, and 18, I think. And I think when they finish, they're going to go from about 13,000 square metres of sand surface to, look, we might finish up at 5,000 or 6,000.
Wow.
But hopefully still has the same impact, and it's not like we're dumbing down the golf course. And that's a term that gets used a lot. You're dumbing down the golf course. No, yes, maybe, but I'm making them playable.
Yep, and maintainable.
And look, I'm sitting here at 59 years of age. 59 years of age. I haven't got a full 18-hole course that I've built from scratch. I've done a couple of 9-hole remodels and a lot of master plans and remodeling works, but I've slotted into this spot in the market where I'm dealing with the bread and butter courses, and I don't say that as to a detriment to the clubs, but these are clubs that are doing 50, 60, 70,000 rounds a year. They don't need buried elephants under their greens. They need to maximise pin areas. So I try to put as much interest in the green while still giving that greenkeeper as many pin positions as I can, and sometimes making it a little bit bland and only having one bunker instead of 4 is what that club needs. And I think I'm trying to design, for the punters getting it around and the club who are trying to maintain that on less than 10 staff.
And that is a really interesting sweet spot, because that I know, and I've played and I've dealt with a lot of golf courses in that middle ground of greenkeeping teams, probably realistically 8 and under, 8 to 4, and clubs, the smaller clubs, the more regional type of clubs. You mentioned Ocean Shores. Ocean Shores is great. South of Byron Bay, big golf course, par 72, 6
huge
par 3.
As well, I can't remember. It's
enormous.
9 hectares or something. It's enormous.
It is huge. 6 par 3, 6 par 4, 6 par 5s. And I remember playing it. I've only played it once, and it's really big. Like, it is really big. And the fact that you've talked about, and I know that it is a regional destination. It is a regional golf club, and there's a lot to maintain. They don't have a staff that they really need to look after that entire space. And if you can reduce and give them a space that they can maintain with what they have within their budget that they can afford, and they can do it well, as a golfer that comes to visit, it's better off. You're much better, and you enjoy a lot more when the golf course is maintained very well for what they have, and they don't have their backsides hanging out for, we can't do the bunkers. We've got to take them out of play for a year or two. And that's what ends up happening, frustratingly. And I get disappointed as a golfer when I play at courses that have bunkers out of play forever. And it's, you kind of go, oh, geez, are they just not really doing well as a club anymore? It's not any of that. It's the dust has settled to what their equilibrium is on what they can maintain for where they are and what they have.
Mm.
And that's my view.
So I'm going through Ocean Shores and other courses. I'm culling bunkers. I'm trying my best not to dumb it down. And then when we rebuild the bunker, we're putting in, I think we're putting custom bind down there. But, there's plenty of good product. Custom bind and capillary concrete, in my mind, are the best two products. There's a split hair between them. But I think you're mad if you're rebuilding bunkers without using one of those products. Danny Potter promotes Eco Bunker as well, which gives you that lovely lip. I know they've got them down there at Kalara there in Sydney.
Yeah.
It firms up that lip. Look, it's an extra expense. If you can afford it, I'd probably say, do that as well if you want that crisp, formal look around the top. But you've got to be putting some of those products in. You can't just shell out the clay, put a drain line in. Otherwise, you're just going to have the same problems down the track. So they're bunkers. They're supposed to be a hazard. I don't know how we got into, this level of perfection. Golfers just expect perfection. I blame Augusta.
I think a lot of us do as greenkeepers. I know we do. Superintendents, we blame television.
It's not real. It's Mickey Mouse golf. It's Mickey Mouse maintenance. No one can rebuild a bloody golf course every year. So, and a poor old golfer, whether or not you've got 3 staff and a $500,000 budget, they want to go in there. And if the bunker's not perfect for the green, guess what? They're complaining. And it's, my admiration for some of those guys who've got 1 and 2 staff members are phenomenal. They're under just as much pressure as, Richard Forsyth up the top of the tree. He's got 36 holes to look after in a monstrous $1 million I don't know, $4 or $5 million budget, but they're both under the same pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because golfers are golfers, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting way of looking at it, and I'm curious. I'm going to throw another one at you, which we're bouncing around a little bit here from what I thought of, but that's okay because I like rabbit holes. And I recently went to Hobart. Okay, so I went down and I visited Royal Hobart, and you talked about changing bunkers and reducing size and area and making them more poignant and more particular in their location and how they work and affect the mind of a golfer. So I think it's the 7th at Royal Hobart that you redid. Was it a couple of years ago?
Geez, I'm losing track of years, but it might even be nearly 4 years ago now. We went down and did a master plan, and just from budget sort of things, we said the 7th was the most dangerous, 7th and the 8th, because we used to get balls sprayed out from the right of the 6th.
Yep.
So safety was probably what instigated doing that the 7th hole. I wanted to get a short par 4 in there, and that was the best hole on the layout to have a crack at it. So we spun it around, got into a safer zone. I've added 2 bunkers there that are maybe 40 square metres inside, maybe not even that. Just small little bunkers, because the bunkers were failing at Royal Hobart because it's not the windiest place. It still gets decent wind, but the bigger, broader bunkers, the wind just had time to come in over the top, blow in underneath, undercut the other side, and I think it was the northwest was the predominant wind, and we worked out that every one of the bunkers that had facing that side was just trashed.
Yeah,
on top of the fact that bloody water table sits about half an inch below the surface. So any heavy rain comes up and they just end up like swimming pools. I still don't know how to solve the water table problem. Everything just basically needs to be built higher. We've got an RL, but look, we went and built that 7, put a bit of strategy into it. We had a lot of width to play with, so I put a central bunker and said, go down the left, go down the right. Built not an overly large green, not a crazy heavily contoured green, but one of them ones where I hope they knock it on and make a lot of birdies, and hopefully they stuff it up and make a few sixes, and next week they're standing on the tee, hopefully whether to lay up left or right, and got some shot options. So I was very happy with how it turned out. We built it down there with Darby Muller, who's been one of my guys over the years.
Yep.
And we did the practice tees and some of the practice chipping areas over there as well. So that was kind of to give them a taste for what was to come in the master plan. But unfortunately, they're in a rare situation down there where they've got 2 driving range, east and western driving range, both enormous. They decided they were going to chop one of them up for housing, which would have still left an enormous practice area. But that's where we've been. We've been in limbo for the last 3 years, spinning our wheels. That hasn't been approved. I've been a little bit out of the loop there for the last year or two. But they haven't got that for the funds to do the golf course. And I don't know where we're at with that. It's, I'm looking forward to the day that somebody rings me up from down there, and I know the young Super's just moved out, probably through frustration of, I think he'd been down there, just trying to think of his name, Sean. Anyway, he's just got the job at Royal Pines up here in the Gold Coast, and I think he was just a bit frustrated that the construction wasn't happening, and I think he'd kind of signed up to be rebuilding the golf course, and he's unfortunately moved on. But
Sean Bowden. And I know Sean Bowden, and I went down to visit. But obviously went down to see 7 Mile and Arm End, and I've known Sean a little bit, and he was on my podcast a couple of years ago, and great bloke, sensational guy. And I thought, look, while I'm down, I'll say good day to Sean and see what Royal Hobart's all about, because I'd never been there. And he showed me around a lot. And you're right, he's recently moved on. He's come up to the Gold Coast to Royal Pines, and as superintendent. And reasons why he's moved on, I'm not really certain. But he showed me the 7th, and that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit, because that's a classic where you talk about what you are trying to do to some of the golf courses, and you've articulated, again, very well there what a lot of people won't consider is how wind erosion occurs and how that affects sand and movement in bunkers, and that's a maintenance thing as well. You talked about the water table issues down there at Royal Hobart. That's another challenge altogether. But I liked, when I looked at the 7th and I stood on the tee and Sean took me around to the tee, I really loved the options. And you mentioned there, the next time a player comes to the tee, after they've already played it once, and then I think that gives them more questions, because the first time you're going on what you see and you're not sure how it's going to play out. The next time you go, well, I did that. I don't know if I want to do that again, or if it worked, I'm going to try and do that again. If you don't execute whatever it is, if you go right and it worked, or if you go left, you try. The green from memory is kind of more east-west than anything, so it's quite a shallowish type of green, I think, from memory. Drops away at the front left, and that central bunker was really interesting to see from the tee because it's not up against the green, and that plays with your eyes.
I think it wasn't crazy. It was like 220 metres. I mean, that's out of the ballpark to me. I can probably aim at it, hit my Sunday best, and I'm probably still not reaching it. But 220 is a carryable distance these days with all the equipment stuff. But they've still only got a little bit of a landing pad to get it on. If they go down into that bit deep swale on the left-hand side, there's no gimme up and down. And
it's horrific. I do not want to be there for one.
Yeah.
I'm taking a 4 at best. There's no way.
If they block it out to the right, they've got to come over that little potty bunker. They're in trouble there as well. And, maybe they're better off just hitting a 4-iron off the tee and getting their wedge distance. But the term we kept saying when we were building it was let's give them enough rope to hang themselves. And let's talk them into risk and reward. Let's try and get them to fly that trap. And we'll see how many threes are made down that left-hand gully.
And you know what? It invites. It's almost a par 3.5 is kind of how I looked at it, right? And I think half pars in your mind are really where the best golf holes sit. I think it gives you that indecision straight away. That's a personal thing.
Short par 3s, short par 4s, and I don't. It's probably accentuated by the fact that I'm hitting it nowhere. But a guy like me. If we get off the forward tees, I might still be stupid enough to try and get it, within 10 yards of the green, even though I've just said, go back, hit your wedge, get your wedge distance and go in there. But you want to just give them enough rope to hang themselves. But I'm in the game. If I make it, I was looking at this bloody, this event in Hawaii at the moment, and their drivable par 4 is, I don't know, it's probably still 340 metres or something. Now, you go and put that into the real world, there's only 5% of the field could probably even get there. Whereas the more people who are tempted to have a crack at it, the better the hole is. And that relates to more 100, 120 metre par 3s than continually trying to build them at 160, 70, 80. It brings all of the punters into the game, not just the guys who can smash it.
Absolutely. And the guys who can smash it can just go back another club and bring it back to the distance of the green. So they're still going to hit the green, whether it's 300 metres or 230 metres. It's irrelevant. It's bringing everyone else up to that level as well, I think. And I think, like I said, when I saw that hole, when Sean took me around and showed me that hole, I just thought, how cool a golf hole. I really wanted to go and play it. I didn't get the chance, but that was one example of what you've been talking about so far. And it was a conversion, obviously, from what they had previously. So I wanted to bring that up and hear from you how you got to those things and what you're trying to achieve. And that's brilliant. Thank you.
I really hope they get their finances sorted down there because I haven't seen 7 Mile since its very early construction days, but it's going to open up. It's going to bang straight into the top 20 in Australia, probably lower. You're going to have 18 holes of what you've just described. Hopefully risk and reward. Hopefully there's a bit of room to play 7 Mile, and I'm sure Plates and DeVries have done a fantastic job. So you're going to have people jumping off planes in Hobart, and you don't want them to go, oh, well, we'll have a game at Royal Hobart because it's there. You want them to say, well, Hobart's a standalone place anyway. I mean, it would have been great if they'd finished their remodelling and they could have opened up at similar times, and it would have been and change it to a no-brainer. We've got to stay another day. We must play Royal Hobart. Whereas now I don't know. They probably still will to a certain degree, but before I'd even done that work there were a few guys on the committee that really did some good stuff in their tree management, which just basically means it was just getting overgrown. It needed a haircut, and they'd already done a fantastic job by opening up some of the playing lines. And we took out, there was one patch there, I think we took out 400 pines or something, and the superintendent of the day before Sean, Steve Lewis, he said, I never used to get more than, 3 or 4 hours of sunlight on the back of such and such green, and now it's in full sun all the time. And removal of trees airflow, sunlight. You've got to give your greenkeepers a chance to grow grass.
It's interesting how far south that is when you go down there, and what the sun does in the lower times of the year in winter and that sort of stuff. It makes it very, very difficult and challenging.
Well, that's 7th green. I mean, we've still got we've probably got 40 or 50 metres over the back fence to where that pine forest is, and that still poses some shade issues.
Well, there's an update for you in a way, because I do know that just recently they've started clearing out and harvesting the pine forest right behind the green as well. I only saw that just the other day, and I know that I think it's Cricket Tasmania or somebody's just done a deal with the club for something as well. So there is an update there, mate. So.
That, obviously, there's a property boundary at the back of that 7th. That's not their pine trees. But they've got their own little paddock that's at the right of the 12th hole, I think it is. And they must be getting close to harvest it. And I think that's where all the cricket stuff's going to go, which is... And again, when I was doing the master plan, do we build golf holes out there? Do we turn it into a 27-holer? I still thought they've got a really good members 18 there. And, yeah, interesting that they've gone down the different line of putting some cricket stuff in there. But, hey, listen, if it pays some bills and keeps the course ticking along, it's a good thing.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's the case, mate, and we can start to see. It'll be great, like you said, to have Royal Hobart as a destination on the back of some of the new stuff that's being done very, very close by. Interesting stuff as well. So, mate, we'll move along a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the work that you've done. You mentioned Ocean Shores up in northern New South Wales. Where are some of the other places?
It's been fairly recent. Look, some of the first when I didn't explain when I left Ross, it was a similar situation to Marsh's. There was absolutely no work in 2008. He said, "Listen, Rich, there's a bit of work going on in India. Why don't you go over to the India Golf Show? Take your laptop, put some of your computer's pictures up there." Mate, I went to this 3-day India thing in New Delhi, and as I was setting up the booth, I was there on my own. As I was setting up the booth, I put my posters up on the wall, laptop was on the table. I went for a walk around to say good day to the other 30 architects that had the same idea as me. And when I got back to my desk, my laptop had been stolen, and
what?
Gave me my laptop was gone before the golf show even started. So I kept saying, "Yeah, sorry guys, haven't got any pictures for you here." There was a guy 6 feet from our table with a gun, but all the guys setting up the booths were going in and out, and yeah, he just must have walked out with my computer. So that gave me a bit of a sour taste. Didn't completely love India. And the day we were leaving, we were supposed to be going down to the Taj Mahal for a tour. And that's when that stuff went down at Mumbai with the shootings and the stuff. And
oh, dear.
So I got myself on a plane and got the hell out of it. And I said, "No, Ross, you can stick India. I don't really want to go back there." So he said, "Well, unfortunately, I've no work. Now would be a really good time to go out on your own." Fantastic. 2008. There's no golf work out there at all, and I'm embarking on my own golf course design company. But look, I got started with clubs at Taree, Wembley and Perth, City at Toowoomba. They've been really good clients. I've worked with City at Toowoomba. I've got a guy called Ed Brittle, who's been the president up there for, it's probably about 30 years.
Wow.
He must be one of the longest standing presidents, but that club as a whole has gone from just some shitty little shack to, I know admittedly it's a pokey palace there at the moment, but it's a thriving club. The course is good. Johnny Holter does a really good job. Bent Green's up there at Toowoomba. And I've been still doing ongoing work. So that's basically 15 or 16 years of ongoing work with the City of Toowoomba.
Wow.
Did some greens at Cobram, Baruga, Cairns. Like I have pencil, will travel. It was sort of like back in the day. And if I look at some of the more current stuff I've got going on, I think on my desk at the moment I've got a new putting green at Bankstown. Cooley Tweed are looking at doing their river course greens, which I've got the gig for.
Wow, congratulations. That's a good one.
Two greens designed at Raw Frio, so I'll be going over there with Jason Kelly in March to build them. He's got a WebEx tournament, I think, coming up soon, so his head will be hectic. I can always relate. As I was writing these down on my little list yesterday, I go, yep, Jason Kelly at Raw Freo, Bankstown, Dave Somerville. I always relate it to the superintendent's name, never the general manager, just because that's the affiliation I got.
That's
New 18th green at Coffs will get built this year. 4 at Harvey Bay, Bankstown, McLeod, Southport. There's master plans and remodelling work. I think that's the guts of my job. But I've still got a couple of really cool projects. There's a new course planned at Gladstone, which I'm expecting a phone call any day now that says the DA's approved. Let's get up here and design it. And I'll say, yep, no worries at all. Slash the grass, get rid of the taipans and browns, and I'll come up for a site walk. I'm terrible with snakes. Look, there's been some good clients there that have really sort of stuck by me, and Lonna's down there at Cooley Tweed.
Yep.
It's good going back year after year. You know the system, you know the superintendent, you know how he operates. I never get hung up in amendments to the green, the grassing. That's his department. I'm not going to pretend I know more than you. And I try to use the same shapers. I mean, the shapers obviously are very important. I've used the Lindman brothers over the years. A lot of Darby Muller down in Sydney. Darby did Royal Hobart. I'm using Chicka King a lot, who's a terrific bloke down the Chinder way. So it's just good when you go there. They know what you like. I know what they're capable of. That's the association between the superintendent, the golf architect, and the shaper. That's a really important triangle. There's quite often, the guys will go, okay, we'll save a few bucks. Jono can drive a Bobcat. We'll build it. And I go, no, sorry, if you're going to build it half-assed, I don't really want to be a part of it. If we're going to build it properly, I'm all in.
Yeah, and that's going to be a reflection ultimately, and I say this a lot, and I don't know if you agree or not, but greenkeeping brings the best out of architecture, can also destroy architecture, and in turn, how you build something will determine how it can be maintained, and then ultimately how that architecture plays. Yeah.
So, look, I've really enjoyed my 25 years or so working for myself, plus the 15 before that in my 15-year apprenticeship, as I called it. Another course that's on my list here that I really should mention is Karratha up in WA. Now,
oh, wow, okay.
I don't know if you know anything about Karratha, but there's a great young bloke up there. I say young, he's just cracked over 50, but Callum Hitchings up there, and they had a really nice little 18-hole layout, but they had sand greens.
Yeah, wasn't
anyway,
there? Yeah.
It was owned and run by the Karratha City Council up there, and there was a group on the committee. It used to be just a really rough dirt golf course, and I don't know, probably going back 15 or 20 years, a few of these guys got hold of some Santarana, and they just basically chucked it on there to see what would happen, thinking it would fail. And the Santarana fairways went out of control, and
wow,
some of the fairways up there, effluent water, are as good as I've seen anywhere. And I did the master plan back in 2014. Not long after that, Callum came on board, and they did the irrigation system with John Pryor. So
yep.
that was so we've got nice, and the land was simple but lovely little rolling dunes, the red sandy soil. We didn't really want to put too many bunkers in there, but they would have going to be great for sandy waste. And look, it took us a decade, but we ended up converting the 18 greens to grass. Callum ended up going with velveteen.
That's a paspalum, I think.
That's a paspalum.
Yep.
And he did all the tests, and there was a couple of them in the photo finish. There was a course north of Perth, Geraldton, I think it was, and I went up there once or twice to Karratha for the Pro-Am, and the pros at Western Australia, almost to a man, said those greens at Geraldton are as good as you'll see, and they've got velveteen. It was a grass I know nothing about.
Yep.
And, mate, they're fantastic. They're, it can get blowy up there as well. The odd cyclone rolls in, but Callum looks after the greens and the fairways. I think the volunteers mow the rough. It's called buffle grass. It's got this wispy, tufty stuff, which is a bitch to get out of. but it really gives you some great contrast. I'll send you a few photos of that place. And,
and I'll put them up on socials, mate. I have heard a little bit about Karratha. I've seen some of the stuff on socials, and I did know about the greens conversion, and I think that coincided with the access to the effluent water. And that's often where we see a grass type like Velvetina paspalum, because it can deal with the salt content of the water, the salinity levels and that sort of stuff a lot better than some of the other grass types for greens. And that's great to hear. I think Karratha's, I won't say remotely located up the northwest of WA, but they are.
It's a 2-hour flight from Perth. It's some of my site visits were up there in 42, 44 degrees, and I'm looking at them going, how do you guys even think about playing golf? They play 9-hole comps in the summer, 18-hole comps in the winter. It's just too friggin' hot. But it's a really interesting place. You still got the FIFO workers. I don't know where they are with that. It goes ups and downs as to dying up and ramping up. But it's probably the centre of the Pilbara up there. And mate, they've taken this little club to be an absolute cracker. I will say that I was probably about 6 months ago. I don't know if you know the old Horton Park superintendent, Pat Pawley.
No,
he's been around. He's been around in the industry for a long time. He's put the cue in the rack now, and he's driving around Australia. And he just rang me out of the blue. I hadn't spoken to Pat in a decade, and he rang me up and he went, I was going past in the caravan. I stopped. I went and had a game of golf at Karratha and went, how good is this? No one knows about it. It took him about 3 days to work out who did the greens. And then he went out of his way to give me a call and say, brilliant job, that it just really works well, which was fantastic. But unfortunately for me, there's not too many people driving past Karratha like Pat Pawley that can give it a bit of a rap. But if anyone's within Cooey up there, go and have a look at it. It's fantastic. Callum has his whole, he's now not employed. He's now basically a contractor.
Yep.
Mate, his family help him out up there. He's one of the nicest humans on the planet, Callum, up there, and we had a great time. Me, Chicker, and Callum got a little bit loose at some of the pubs some of the nights because we worked really hard in the heat. Even though they just say, I walk around, wave my arms around and get the paint can out every now and again. But it's hard doing that for 8 hours in 40-degree heat. But it's probably one of my favourite projects that I've worked on up there.
That's impressive. And remote golf courses, and I have said this a lot, that I think in a remote community, a golf course and a golf club is like the centre of the social scene in a sense. It's a place for people to let their hair down, everyone come together and connect after a long week of work or whatever those time frames are. And they really are a great community centre. And it sounds like Karratha has just become such a great space at the golf courses in that township up there in the northwest, which is so good to hear.
And look, what I did enjoy about it is these, as I call them, bread and butter courses, the courses that are just smashing through a ton of play where I had to be a little bit more conservative on the greens, give them pin positions. Look, Karratha's probably still only going to do 10,000 rounds a year, so I could push the contours a little bit there, a little bit harder, and we did a few weird and wonderful things. Most of it worked.
There you go. Mate, you've great lot of work there that you have going on and lots of places that you've done some great work on in the past, which is great to see from a business perspective and certainly for us to understand as the audience. And there's lots of people that listen that work at golf clubs, that are superintendents, that are committee members and board members. So that's another reason why I want to make sure that we get to expose the members of the Society of Australian Golf Course Architects like yourself to get that name out there a little bit more so that if people are interested in looking at things, they come to you. Mate, I really want to talk about something a little bit left of field here, that you have a big part of your business and something that you do that a lot of people probably don't even consider. And I know that you've opened up a new one not far from me here in Terry Hills, and that is mini golf. Mate, talk to us a little bit about this mini golf part of your business. And it's come a long way since days of old where I suppose we think of it as carnival-style putt-putt with clown faces and windmills like we've seen in Happy Gilmore. But you're one of the leading designers, certainly in Australia, of mini golf courses, and you've done some incredibly outstanding examples right around the country. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do there, your philosophy behind this modern mini golf, I suppose, courses that are going around? There's one up here at Terry Hills at Swing Factory, I think it is.
Yeah, really happy. Just finished that one, and we've just knocked out another one at the Launceston Casino down in Tassie. It's getting the finishing touches on it. It'll probably open up in about March. Yeah, mate, they've been fantastic. And it started 2014, 2015. Matty Day was the general manager over at Wembley Golf Course. And he tapped me on the shoulder. I'd been doing a few little bits and pieces on the course. He says, work out how to build a mini golf course because we're putting one in. And I went, mate, I don't have a clue what to do for a mini golf.
And Wembley's in Perth. Let's just double.
Wembley's in Perth, central Perth, 36 holes. Darren Wilson's been there forever.
Big facility.
Big facility.
I think it's the busiest in Australia, is it not? As overall, I think so.
It'll take some beating. It really will take some beating. And mate, they had the council golf course. It had the backing of Cambridge Council. They had some good people there. A lot of planning went into it, and they didn't build a small one. They built. I've just knocked out. Launceston will be my 15th mini golf course.
Wow.
And none of them are even close to the size that Wembley is. Wembley's on about 5,000 square metres. We had to make 9 holes of it universal wheelchair access, which meant we had to put a few more parts in, which was really hard on a course that sloped about 8 metres from one top to the other. So it took a little bit of work to get those 1 in 14 wheelchair grades. But we made it happen, and each golf hole has 3 cups. There's generally 2 at the back, only because each hole was so big. It was a really, really big project. And then at one stage they said there was another little putting green. They wanted to make a dinky mini golf course just for kids. And I said, well, let's incorporate the kids into the main golf hole. So we added a 3rd hole. Generally it was about halfway along, or, a shorter golf hole. But we put in one of those big cups that was about, I don't know, 200 mil in diameter. So 2 regular cups, 1 big cup, and it just worked. They can pretty much go out there and play in a group of 4, 5 or 6. They've had tournaments there. Here's a few numbers at you. I'll just put the sales pitch mode on at the moment. Wembley cost $2 million to build.
Okay.
Most of the ones I've built are about half that. On about 2,500 square metres. Now, they opened their gates and they did 60,000 rounds.
60,000 rounds?
60,000 rounds. I don't know what they're charging at the moment. It wasn't crazy, but it would have been maybe $20. Maybe it might have snuck up to 25 now. So you do the math on 60,000 rounds at $20, and that thing paid for itself inside 2 years. In fact, it was probably close to 18 months.
That's what I was just going to talk about as well, is on face value. Anyone says 1 million, 2 million, right? It's a mini golf course. That's a lot of cash for something small. But once you immediately talk about the conversion there, it becomes a money-making monster.
Yeah.
And I know people who have put other golf courses, I know general managers that have done it and put them in, and they just go, Steve, there's our license to print cash over there. And I'm like, wow. And you took me, when I came up the Gold Coast a couple of years ago, you took me up to Meadowbrook and showed me the one that you put in there.
Was it finished then, or were we still building it?
No, it just finished.
So, it was another really good one at a quiet course in Logan. That was an 18-holer on maybe 2,500. That seems to be my model. Look, prices are going up. Let's say you can build it between 1 and 1.2 mil, and that's shaping, design, synthetic grass, landscape, fencing, lighting, even putters, balls, flags. Turn the switch, off you go, you're playing mini golf. Now, even those courses that aren't as big as Wembley, they're still doing 40 and 50,000 rounds a year. I still keep saying, don't get silly with the price. Make sure that a family can rock up there for $50 and play with 2 adults and 2 kids, and that's what they do. And I don't think we built a little one up at Toowoomba in the early days, and they budgeted 30,000 rounds in the first year. Didn't know how it was going to go. Opened the gates, and they did 46,000 rounds in year 1. And honestly, most of them have paid themselves off well inside 2 years. And a lot of thought goes into the design. I'm on site. When we start the course, we'll clear it, we'll get it ready. And then we use Chicker. We use the golf course shaper to do our shaping. And me and Chicker and Harry Day and Brett Ruddy, they're our core 4 guys. We'll probably still take 6 or 7 weeks to get it ready for concreting. So we don't rush it. We put time and effort into everything as to where the kids could hit the ball out of play. We want to put a rock or timber there, and we don't want to overdo the rock and timber, but we know we need to somehow contain those balls within the playing arena. But we put a lot of thought into how the ball's going to react, and still a bit of risk and reward. Well, a lot of risk and reward as to, look, there's an easy way. Knock it down between those two bits of timber. You might get a hole in one. If you don't, you're going to make a four. Play it the safe way. You're not getting a hole in one. It's exactly the same as golf, but it's playable. It's not stupid hard. That's the two things that I always used to find that it would take. There's nothing worse than having a family there and waiting for four groups on one tee because it was too hard and everyone's making an 8 or a 9 and it's just ridiculously hard. We still make it playable where hopefully the worst you're going to shoot is a 4 or something like that, and they can get the whole thing around. They play 18 holes in 45 minutes, an hour tops, and that keeps cranking along and gets them through.
And at the end of it, you mentioned something really good there, which I think we forget, and we forget it in golf, the full size version, right? Is it's fun. It's meant to be fun. Like this is what you want kids to pick up the game. I remember when I was a kid, we were just out the back flogging golf balls around the golf course. I wasn't really playing golf holes, particularly when I was 9 years old. I was just whacking a golf ball around. It's fun. The essence of golf is fun. You've made mini golf. One thing I saw when I first saw the one at Meadowbrook is you can see the shapes, you can see the lines, you can see and if I get a hole in one, I don't care if it's a straight putt. I'm jumping through hoops. And if I'm a kid, I'm doing cartwheels, right? And that's what I see is in these designs. So tell us a little bit about, like you mentioned, it's like a smaller version of golf. Did you get that from somewhere else? Is this just something that you come up with? I'm curious to understand, because it isn't, like I said before, it's not this carnival type of windmills and clown faces. No. It's a miniature version of golf for putting with intricacies like on a golf hole. So where did that come from? Where did that come? Yeah, I'm just curious.
Again, that word playability and hole-in-ones. Well, look, maybe back in the early days, we might have done a couple of layup holes where we said, look, you can't get at the hole, you want to lay up over there. We threw that idea away very quickly and said, no, we're going to give everyone a chance to have a hole-in-one on every hole. It might be a difficult shot, but I want to still give them that opportunity because we've done a couple. There's an absolute cracker at Cobram Barooga. If you ever go past Cobram Barooga, back in there, we built a 9-holer for them.
I'm going down there. I'm going to be down there for the WebEx Player Series.
Mate, mention my name and they will give you a Blue Moon Pale Ale and they will let you on the mini golf course. I'll give you the CEO's name. But there's a hole there where it's 32 metres in length, but you pretty much have to tap it. And we've done these luges that go down the hole. Man, so much work went into these luges. And not only in the construction, I mean, the skill of Chicka King to get these shapes done is phenomenal. But then we fly our concreting crew from Perth, and I'll give them plug. They're called Royale Concrete. They send five guys over. It takes them 2 weeks to concrete it. They are absolutely brilliant. They get all the little intricacies that I want, and they must have built out of the 15 courses. They probably built about 11 of them. I think they've even done a lot of golf course work. I think they've been doing all the paths over there at Kennedy Bay, and I think they've done a bit of work at Cottesloe for Desi Russell too. So they've now got a little bit of a connection with golf for card pass if you're over in Perth. But this hole goes down the luges and it either will go in the hole or it'll go very close to the hole. We just called it the U factor, where they'll be on the tee, they'll tap it. It probably takes 6-7 seconds for the ball to go down the bottom of the hill, and you'll either get a yahoo for going in or an ooh when it shaves the hole. And they said that the buzz that it creates in the whole mini golf is exactly what we're looking for. I mean,
that's so good.
Don't go and make it too hard and too challenging. There's a mini golf tour out there. There's guys that play it for money, and a lot of these guys go around afterwards and they'll set their camera up and they'll go for hours to try and get the hole in one. Sometimes they want a little bit more challenge to it.
Sure.
But I said, yeah, I get that, but the way I've done it is why you're going to get 40 and 45 and 50,000 rounds a year, because it's not that I don't want to say it's not that hard, but it's playable.
Hey,
And
you still got to
and,
put it in the hole.
and if you look at Wembley now, God knows, Wembley's probably coming up to 10 years. It'd be 7 or 8 easy, and they're still cranking through those numbers. Many guys have built simpler. I think they think it's just a matter of, let's just put down some shapes. But a lot of them get boring over time. Mine are interesting enough because we just spend so much time building the golf holes. Instead of the family playing it once a year, they're hopefully going to play it once a month. And that's what's ticking over. That's why they're successful and earning these amounts of money. The phone's ringing its head off. I've got one at a footy club in Carina coming up. There's plenty more leads. I've sort of formed an affiliation with the Swing Factory guys who took over the driving range there. So they're really good operators in driving range world, and they're doing some course management as well. So I've already built one at Morak in Melbourne for them. Terry Hills, if any listeners are near Morak or Terry Hills, go and have a look at them. So they've already told me every time they get a driving range, they're putting one of my mini golfs in. I think when we get to the end of 2025, I think there's going to be a big run on Swing Factory projects. I know there's going to be one out near Camden, 27-holer that's getting built.
Yeah, right.
Look, if you're a golf club and you've got a little bit of a space, even if you don't have a little bit of a space, have a chat. If shortening a hole by 50 metres allows you to fit one of these things in, there's opportunities to get grants for them. And who doesn't want something? Yeah, I know it's scary when I go, look, it's $1 million to build, and they go, oh no, we can go to someone else and get one done for half that price or 3/4 of that price. That's fine. But I know mine will keep kicking goals year after year after year. And I mean, who doesn't want to spend $1 million, have a 2-year payback, and have 3 or 4 or 500K jumping in every year? That's now the device that is going to fix irrigation systems and rebuild greens and do stuff to the course.
It's a very different prospect when you start to consider what that does for a club's bottom line, and it becomes a different income or a different revenue stream that they never had before. So lots of decisions there and things to think about for clubs, and obviously there's some great golf clubs that are already doing it and have seen that, and it's worked incredibly well. It's funny we're talking about it because I remember a conversation I'd had with our developers when I was working at Katoomba before we closed down. And in 2009, and this mini golf wasn't anything, right? It was just still those little box ones in I suppose city areas and things like that, where gone are the days they've been around since the 80s. But we were looking at a space where they were putting the units around the back of the golf course around the first hole, and we were looking at a space that was in between these units where it was like I can't remember what it was, but they were going to put like a little couple of barbecues, picnic tables, but then do a mini golf course. And it probably wasn't anything like what's being done today, like you're talking about. But the idea from a developer's mind was to get people in. So we wanted to get kids in, you get the parents in, and give them another way to come in and get interested in golf and see what a simpler version of golf was before you get into the big version of golf. And
that's a classic, yeah.
Do you see this? Is this something that is converting with these clubs as well, that it gets kids interested in the sport? Because let's face it, just knocking a ball around on the green is what I hear that they do in the British Isles when you're kids, because they're so abundant. I don't know, I've never been there, but I did that as a kid. It was my backyard. Is that what some of the conversion is that you're hearing as well?
I know Golf Australia is sort of jumping into this, but it's a great stepping stone. Get them out onto the mini golf. Get them onto a driving range. If they don't have a kids party there, and if they haven't got someone walking around going, "Hey, why don't you come to a junior clinic?" then they're mad, because okay, for every 100 kids, if you can get 5 of them to turn up to a clinic and get them a love for golf, then they're going to finish up being golfers, and it just dominoes through the whole industry. It's a really, really positive thing. The first Swing Factory one we did at Morak, so they're on an 18-hole golf course. Now they've got a kick-ass range and the mini golf, and they want to do exactly that. They want to get it from the putter to hitting a few balls, then learning some of the basics, and eventually we want them to be golfers. I mean, Dad shoved a club in my hand. I've got a photo sitting on my desk here where, Dad mowed the backyard out at put a putting green in, a couple of flags, and I must have been about 5, and that was my introduction to golf. And
Yeah.
it's just been I know there's a lot more distractions for kids these days, but a lot of my mates started playing golf at an early age, fell in love with it, and here I am at 60. My body's broken down, and I'm going to be playing golf until the day I give it away, or until my body stops me. It's just such a fantastic game.
No, it's brilliant, and I love to hear that all the different parts. As a mind of an architect, a lot of people are going to hear this, mate, and they'll be like, "Mini golf, a golf course architect, mini golf? What's that?"
Well, I mentioned the Cobram Barooga one. I mean, Cobram Barooga is not a big town. I don't know what its population is. It'd be lucky if it was 10 of 20,000. So they didn't want to go and build the Haymaker 18-holer. Mate, they went and got a grant for, can't tell you the exact numbers, but it was enough to build a 9-hole mini golf, call it 5 or 600K, and they went and put a couple of simulators in this part of the clubhouse that was just dead. And they've turned the back of their clubhouse that was just dead. It was a morgue. They've turned it in now the actual hub of the club. And they were squirting through, I haven't rung them in a couple of years, but when it opened up, they were doing 250K a year in the mini golf. Again, 2-year payback, and there's 250 jumping in every year after that. And the only real maintenance is if they're getting serious numbers, you may need to replace the synthetic grass at 7 or 8 or 9 years down the track.
Yep.
But if you've worn the grass out, you've made enough.
Yeah.
Made enough coin to spend 100K and replace the grass. But like I said, the demographics, it's getting any golf club that turns their lights off at 6 o'clock or doesn't turn them. Golfers finish at 6 o'clock. That's it. We're closed. They're dying. They're a dying breed at the moment. You need to get people in. You need to get the food and bev there. Mini golfs, they got the floodlights. You can play it at night till 10 o'clock at night. And you're bringing in a different demographic there. And throw in Christmas parties, what do they call it? Team bonding stuff.
Yeah.
Mate, Christmas parties at Wembley are off the charts. Like they're booking them in left, right, and centre. We always knew we'd do kids' parties and stuff like that, but just a group of workers on a Friday afternoon go, yep, we're going to go to the mini golf. Can we book it out for 2 hours?
Wow.
They're now booking it out. It's I've done 15, and there's no end in sight with that. It's now getting to be a pretty tricky balance between the time I'm on the ground for the mini golfs and doing the remodelling. I'm working it up at the moment, but it's a good problem to have, to be honest. They're a lot of fun to do. They're a lot harder than people think they are, and but yeah, I'm really proud of the 15 that I've put out.
No, mate, that's you know what? It's really great to hear your passion about it because and your level of enthusiasm about it, because I don't think, like I said, a lot of people would just go, oh, mini golf. But once you've played them and you've had a taste of it, you realise just how it is different and how interesting and fun it is compared to what your mind thinks a mini golf course is. And that's what I really enjoyed. And I think that's going to open up a lot of things, mate. So, look, congratulations on that side of it, because that's something that we don't hear a lot about. And there's a lot of detail that you put into those projects, and much like you do in all of your golf course, full-size golf course architecture work as well, in the way that you do, mate. So really interesting to hear, Richard. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, mate.
Mate, what have you got in store for 2025 as we look forward? Is there much you touched on a couple of the different things moving forward? You got other things there that we can look at?
Yeah, look, there's at least one mini golf in the first half in Brizzy. There's a couple more circling. I'll probably pick up a second one. Second half of the year, there'll be construction works at Bankstown. I think Southport are doing stuff. I'm working with a couple of retirement living mobs who are, trying to help out. I want to say struggling clubs, but I think they're pretty pertinent down there in New South Wales as well, where these guys come in, take a little bit of land off, maybe a little bit of rejig for the golf course, but it's putting some serious coin into the hands of the club. So there's a few of those projects going along. I'm really hoping the Gladstone one fires up, and there's a few other irons in the fire. I'd love to do the Tweed course as well too, because there's a few funky greens down there at Coolangatta Tweed on the river course that I'd like to put my own stamp on. So and it's close to home. It's nice to drive 20 minutes down the road than jumping on a plane.
for sure. Going to Karratha.
Yeah.
but they're all projects, mate, and they'll have your little stamp on them, which is great. And Coolangatta, it's an old, I suppose, an old established club. It's got a pyramid for a clubhouse. I can't get over the size of that thing. It's insane. But great golf course. I played both of them, and they're enjoyable. And yeah, mate, if you get down there, I'll be interested to see that stuff as well. Richard, mate, it's been fantastic having a yarn with you on the design brief of the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. I really appreciate you giving us a lot of insight, your thoughts and processes behind a lot of your parts of golf course architecture, and even some things that people might not talk about, which is also good to hear, and certainly parts of your business that are going well, and I look forward to seeing your parts in the future. Mate, where can people find you? There's going to be lots of people listening that might be interested in talking to an architect from a club perspective. How do we get hold of you?
Look, my mobile number is 0409 899 007. I've got a website that's pretty crappy because I haven't had time in the last 8 years to fix it up, but it's rcgd.com.au. But basically, give me a call and have a chat. And look, I'm more than happy to provide a little bit of free advice here and there if there's a carrot at the end of it. So if someone just wants to have a chat about something,
and willing to travel, you mentioned it does. It's not about doing work.
Will travel. Yeah, definitely. And look, I certainly want to thank you for giving me the chance to at least have a chat, and hopefully a few people work out that I'm here and I know what I'm doing.
Well, hopefully so.
And look, also, all of the superintendents that I've worked with over the last 30 years, I mean, I just love going to the conference. I do my best to have a beer with nearly every single one of them, but because, some of those conferences can get a little bit hard for me. But yeah, no, listen, I really enjoy it. I don't take myself too seriously. If we're not having fun along the way, then what's the point? So I'm always there for a laugh and a beer and a chat about something. So
fantastic.
I love getting up in the morning and doing what I do.
Sensational, Richard, mate. I'm going to put some clickable links in the show notes so people can have a look and get in touch with you there. Do you have an email address as well?
Richard@rcgd.com.au.
Perfect. We'll make sure people can get hold of you there, and like I said, I'll have links in there. I'll put some stuff up on social media as well, and I can send some photos to me, mate, so I can put them up on social media of where you're out working, and obviously, like I said, this is a connection with the Society of Australian Golf Course Architects. You're a member of. Great to be able to get yourself on, and I look forward to interviewing a lot of other architects along the way that we have in Australia, and it's good to hear from people. Had Ben Davey on a couple of years ago when I got this started, and through my young fella not being so well when he was born, I had to put a pause on things. But good to pick it back up and talk to people that are the names and architects in Australia doing work that we don't often hear about. It's not just the big names and the superstars that get on the news and get in the social media posts. So, mate, it's really good to talk to you. I really appreciate you taking the time to be involved, mate. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. What a fantastic conversation that was with Richard Chamberlain, who is just he's such a down-to-earth bloke. Great to chat with Richard. I really enjoyed that conversation. And like I mentioned, bringing the design brief more to you, more episodes to you, more interviews to you with these golf course architects, and being able to just give you an insight into them. Look, Richard was able to do so. Lots of great projects that he's working on around the country and that he has worked on in the past. And you've heard his background story there. A wealth of knowledge and experience, and he's a name that you might not have heard of, and I'm very, very happy to be able to bring that to you. I'd like to thank, of course, the Society of Australian Golf Course Architects, who I have a working arrangement with, and it's great to be able to talk to the members of the society, which I'm going to be doing more for you. So make sure you check out the show notes, ladies and gentlemen. There's lots of clickables in there to the Society of Australian Golf Course Architects, to their website, and also to Richard Chamberlain Golf Design. There's a few other bits and pieces there of courses that we talked about, so you can go and have a look. And I really hope you enjoyed that one. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave you with it. Until next week, you hit 'em clean, we'll keep 'em green, and I'll catch up with you very soon.